Experts, where we ask the questions you want the answers to. Well, I have a bit of a surprise for you. If you've been with me any length of time, this topic is going to be a bit off. Okay. This topic, we're talking today about being happy, joyful, and free. And you're used to hearing from me about business and marketing and things like that, right? But the special surprise here is what we're going to be discussing with you today is going to impact your life if you let it in a major way. Why? Well, because it's about what we think and how we act and react to life that makes all the difference. And so I don't know if you know this about me, but I have been in recovery in AA for 33 plus years. And so the mechanism, the steps that I've been using to impact every aspect of my life money, health, relationships, spirituality all of it is within these 12 steps. And they work beautifully for anyone. And I have been actually using them for many years to support my friends and mentor, the people across the globe, if you will. But I never really understood the mechanics of it behind the scene. I know that it works. So hence the layperson here. So what did I do? I went to an expert. I went to somebody who knows the ins and outs and how it works and why it works. Sherry Sotelo. Oh my God. I am so excited to have you here. And all of you guys, you're going to fall in love with Sherry. Sherry, thank you so much for agreeing to do this with me.
Anytime. My absolute pleasure. I'm excited to be here.
Well, you agreed to do raw and unfiltered. Everybody, we're watching this. This we haven't really talked about what this is going to be. So any kind of question that comes up is going to be answered on both sides. So
hmm
it's more like we're going to be having an intimate conversation because I have a lot of questions myself to ask Sherry about why and how these steps work. I mean, why? And that's the big question. And so, with that, Sherry, before we dive fully into it, let's talk about you. You have expertise in so many areas that work together,
hmm
and so what? Let's go way back. Let's go way back. What made you decide to actually do well, only the education plus the personal experiences and the expertise that you have in all these different areas? Let's kind of touch upon that because it really blew me away. So let's go way back.
Okay, so way, way back. Let's bring it back to, ooh, boy, 1980. Let's not go that far back with dates. We're not going to reveal anything. I'm holding on to my Asian very well.
Uh, You
Uh,
look gorgeous, by the way. So
thank
I
you,
don't know.
thank you.
I remember the '80s.
So back in the 80s, growing up in San Francisco and watching my parents take in my little cousin, who my mom's sister had a child, but she was also an IV drug user, an addict in and out of prison since she was 13 years old. And here she had this child. Well, not the best mothering situation. And one of her last times going to prison while he was still young, she attempted to throw him off of a second floor balcony because she was high on PCP. So here I was, this young girl, and I got to watch my little cousin, 2 years old, run around and not understand why mom wasn't around. He had to bounce from foster home to foster home. He went from state to state, going to different family members in my mom's family. And then lo and behold, he ended up in my house. And it was at that time just my mom, my dad, me, and my older brother, 3 years older than me. And my cousin at that time, I believe, was 6 years younger than I was. And so I got to watch the formation of what a drug addicted baby in a drug addicted environment and an abusive physical environment turned out in these very overt behaviors. And I'm watching this whole thing go. And I was like, oh no, from the massive, massive trauma that he experienced, nightmares and screaming up and down the halls and not understanding that that was also sleepwalking. I grew up going, uh-uh, this isn't okay. What am I going to do with my life? And that's what made me say then and there and all throughout my teen years, every child deserves to be heard. No child deserves to be just put on the side and allowed to go through while mom's addiction and dad's addiction and coming into a non-addicted household, for the drugs at least, really can mess somebody up. And yeah, that was a hard thing to watch. And so when it came a little bit later in life and I was in high school, now mind you, I didn't have the most beautiful upbringing. This was my mom's sister. My mother is an alcoholic. She was an alcoholic, is an alcoholic. As far as I know, probably still is. And so there's all this chaos, and I'm in high school, fending for myself, doing everything that I need to do. I decided, okay, well, I'm gonna go off to college. So I went in, I'm gonna go run businesses. Businesses, business is always gonna be business. That first psychology class kicked in, and I'm like, ooh, headspace. I'm gonna get into headspace because you can't run a business without the headspace. Meanwhile, my cousin at that time was going in and becoming a little budding preteen. And then into his teen years, as I was in college, I shifted over to a psych degree and I saw the nature versus nurture. So, despite our environment being exactly the same, I saw his behaviors mimic his own mother's, whom still was in prison. As far as I can recall, she served roughly 44 years in prison off and on. And
Wow.
every single one of them was a drug charge. It had nothing to do with other crimes, nothing in violence, simply just drugs. This is how drugs can take over. And then I watched it take over in her own son, who even contacted me in his 30s to say, I don't understand why I feel like this. Why am I so depressed? Why do I have these suicidal thoughts? I don't get it. I said, well, this is the aftermath of what drugs can do. But I learned all that through college. So I got my bachelor's in psychology. I got a minor's in addictions treatment and addictions prevention. I started working with youth from a very, very young age because I already had the tools of like, hey, I grew up with this. I know what this is like. I have family members that have this. I know what this is like. I can navigate it and not be hurt because I was able to build also a really good set of boundaries. Now, mind you, I also had to teeter along my own addictive patterns that could exist very easily from that genetic line. With everybody in my mom's family having alcoholism, not my grandmother, but seeing this pattern exist, I also felt it creep up on me. It's like, oh no, I can get my addictive habits really, really quick. Whether it was all of that very legal alcohol or the smoking of cigarettes, but having to go through and a hurt back and being prescribed opiates. It's like, oh, well, this could be fun to grab onto. And this really needs to not be fun to grab onto. And so I proceeded and went on to grad school and did a little bit more on education. So the master's in counseling, went in for a PhD in clinical psychology. I was like, that's just not enough. I want to know how it works in the workplace. So that PhD in industrial and organizational psychology, because the aftermath of especially high performing individuals and executives, access to alcohol, this stuff that we celebrate over every day, and watching it turn its ugly head and then become out of control and people lose their livelihood. So then I went a little bit further and did that PhD in health psychology because I wanted to know how it affected the bodies. Well, you know, all of those things don't teach you anything about foods. I had to go do some more in nutrition because one of the biggest players in addictions recovery is what is our nutrition? Our nutrition is what fuels our body, what feeds our body. It's also what heals our body. And so I needed it. I had to. I don't know why I had to. Maybe school was my addictive behavior at this point. But that's what brings me to everything that I do today and saying, hey, we can easily lose our balance
Mhm.
unknowingly so quickly. And then it's hard to pull the reins in when it's already out there. So that was the long and short of 4 decades.
No, that was beautiful. I mean, as you were sharing, your background, your experience, and like, my gosh, my heart really goes out to your nephew, or your cousin rather, and but I do understand the mindset. We learn from our family members, and as they're known as the isms, right?
Mm-hmm.
The things that we learn, the way we respond to things, and the way we react to things, in addition to you know, the physical genes and all that gets passed on from parent to children, and so all of this, and that's why it's so hard. For me, I did not have the emotional tools to actually
Mm-hmm.
cope with life, and my parents were not, let's sit down and talk about things. We never did, really. It was, yeah. So
Generationally, it wasn't a norm anywhere around the world, and I can go over more of that later, but that is what I do 15 to 20 hours a day with my clients now, because we didn't learn that at our time.
yeah, and that's why I'm so excited of the cause and effect. It's not just physical. It's not just mental. It's not just emotional. It's the combination of, and also, um, things that we see, like the negative, addictions, if you will, whether it's overeating or gambling or alcohol or drugs and all that. People are actually addicted in a positive way to work, where they
Mm-hmm.
make lots of money, they make things happen, they're dedicated to make a difference on the planet or whatever. Anything can be good or bad. It's like any tool, knowing how to use it instead of the tool using us. That's how I see it, and I'm like super excited to ask you those tough questions, and because my brain is like got all kinds of questions floating around in there.
I love it. This is why I do it. And that's why I did so much education, because I'll never speak to what I don't know. So when I wanted to know, I went and found out.
Yeah,
It's
when you said
important.
that, yeah, when you said that, I'm like, she's the one. She is the one. I want to sit down and have this conversation. I knew it would be many hours. By the way, those of you who are watching, this is basically going to be a four-part series on how to manage ourselves and our lives based on a proven system, if you will, right? It's a proven system. It's been around since 1935. Okay, 1935. So this is something that millions of people have been using across the globe. I know that AA has been around since then, and there are over 2 million people across the globe doing. But now it has, there's, all these different anonymous programs, 12-step programs that anybody, whether it's emotional, whether it's sex, whether it's food, whether it's gambling, whatever it is, anything that's controlling you and your life is a form of addiction. That's what, at least that's my understanding, and we're going to find out how and why we can uh, manage ourselves. What happens with us, and this is what Sherry's here for. This is the layperson. I'll be sharing my experience of the different ways I've been managing my life throughout the years, learn as I go. But Sherry has done all the education behind it all, the whys and the hows and the body and the mind and all that. So, guys, grab those pens and papers if you like to write, which I like to write when I'm learning something new, or do whatever you need to do. But let's get to it. Okay, so Sherry, are we ready to dive in?
Yes, let's do it. Strap in, everybody. Hold on.
Yes, we're in for a ride. Well, I thought that the best way to start this is the very first step. You know, powerless over whatever it is, whether it's the food or money or people or things, all that, and how it makes our lives unmanageable. What exactly happens to us emotionally, mentally, how do we get to a place where we think this one thing is what I have to do. This is the one thing that I'm going to grab onto and hold on to. And I know for me, with alcohol, it was because it made me feel good in the beginning. I was a teenager and I was feeling awkward and not so, well, after a couple of drinks, I was prettier. I could dance better. I was smarter. And next thing I know, it's not, it started backfiring on me, but by then it was too late. By then, my body was craving it, instead of just my mind controlling it. So, what exactly is going on with us just starting at that point?
And you bring up a really good hinging point. You started in your teen years. Well, from 0 to 20, developmentally, what is it that we do as children? And this applies to all children. There's no anomaly that exists that says, okay, this isn't going to happen. It's we're looking around, we're looking for praise, we're looking for acknowledgement, we're looking for approval, we're looking for smiles, we're looking to feel good. However, we also don't have frontal lobe development till our mid 20s. Yay, go team. And we don't have logic and reasoning, judgment, nor emotional consequence as it applies to others. And so when we start off very, very young, and this is where you hear a lot of, oh, well, your brain is stunted wherever you started your drug or alcohol use or any other type of addictive behavior, because we just latched on to, ooh, my feel goods. Just like when we would bring home those papers that had A's. Ooh, my feel good, my approval. I feel free. I'm allowed to feel this joy. It makes me happy. Well, add a substance in there into an illogical, unreasonable, totally emotional mind. And we're like, yeah, this feels good. I'm going to hold on to that feeling. We operate off of repetitive behaviors from our childhood into our adolescence and then into early adulthood because we've created a pattern that says these are the things that allow us to feel good. Now, again, we're creating this space while not using any logic. So we don't understand it, but we formed our own new habit. And like you said, it becomes all of a sudden too late because our GABA receptors, which is our little cells that run around all over, they have these little pockets that look like C's. And as you fill these little pockets and these receptors up with any kind of substance, be it alcohol, opiates, nicotine, they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And for those that aren't familiar with what addiction includes, it includes tolerance, feelings of withdrawal, and this dependence. Well, when we go and try and fill this little space back up, we're going to go look for more and more and more. Well, that's what our brain has now created as its norm. And going from your teen years, if I may ask, when did you start?
17.
17. Okay. So 17, the crux of from 14 to 17 is how we are establishing relationships in our developmental cycle. And we're going to see, okay, we're testing out all of our things. Which relationships make us feel good? Which relationships make us not feel good? What have we learned so far, all the way up through 13, 14 years old? And now we're going to implement it. And you said, well, the alcohol came in and it made me feel prettier. It made me dance. It made me feel free. It made me feel all of these things. Well, unknowingly, unbeknownst to us, we just doubled down on ourselves, took all the inhibitions, gave us this mock relationship thing that said, oh, look, it all feels good. And there you have it. You just created a new narrative for yourself that created a physical response. Dopamine releases, muscle tension is down, anxiety is down. Why wouldn't we continue this?
You know, that makes perfect sense because my understanding with my experience and with people that I work with over the years, very few of us actually like the taste of alcohol. The first drink does not taste good. The body says, "Oh no, get this out of me. I don't like it." But the brain is coming and saying, "Whoa, I'm feeling good. Yeah, give me more of this." So the brain overrode the physical. And so no, more of this. I like who I am. And then after a while, when the brain was like, wait a minute, I'm acting stupid and this is not right. I'm spending all my money on things I shouldn't be. I am, I am not responding. I am not doing this. I am not whatever it is. I want to stop. The body's like, heck no, it's part of my breathing and living tools. So you are not going to give it up. And that was my experience. Like by the time I was like, no, this is not right. I don't feel right. I don't
Mhm.
feel good. The hangovers and all that. So, so it was like the whole we said the pickle and the cucumber, right? The cucumber turns into a pickle, never to go back to a cucumber again. So hence it just the transition happened. But I do want to bring up what we see in our family. What we learn. You brought that up within your family and the things you've learned because your aunt was raised in the same family, and I want to hear more about that. But for me, I am. Um, Growing up, there was always liquor in the house. There were always people. The tables were full and things. So to me, liquor was just part of it. You
Yeah, it's
just,
the norm.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
And that's what we do. We are observational little beings. We absorb everything. And as we're these little kids and we're looking up and going, okay, we're supposed to behave like this and we're supposed to behave like this. And I see those people laughing and smiling and having a good time. And when they're like that, they also smile down at me and, oh, everything's great. And, because they're inebriated in that time. So, what does a child with no logic understand? Oh, 1 plus 1, so human plus alcohol equals smiles, equals nice to me most of the time. And then here's where some other habits can be formed because this really attacks the self esteem as children is that, ooh, well, I want to go operate with my parent when they're in this state because I know that's when I can get something, or I know that's when they're going to smile at me. And if they're not a happy drunk, then, ooh, what do I have to do? I'm going to rustle up all my little memories of happy moments because I only know how to operate emotionally. I only know how to operate off of my happiness. I'm going to go try and fill those spots. So we don't see that the alcohol is bad or that the addiction is bad. We see that it creates smiles and rewards because there's a lot of guilty parenting that happens through alcoholism. That I'm operating fine. I'm going to my job and I'm providing for you. Here, let me buy you these extra things because maybe I was too hungover and I couldn't attend your sports game. Or I missed that parent teacher conference because I smelled like alcohol. Let me make it up to you. So again, children without knowledge of any type of consequence or reasoning and logic, we don't have the understanding and we don't know how to differentiate that reward system wasn't equal to alcohol. So when I grow up, I want to try it too because there's a lot of rewards with alcohol. We only see it as, ooh, okay, this is just how we operate. This is how adults operate. Why would I know anything different? We don't have capacity to know anything different. And we do that all
That's
the way through up until about 20 years old. And then too late, we're off on our own. We're adults. We're like shoved into society all around the world going, all right, kiddo, guess what? You just hit a number. Not that your brain is ready, but you
yes.
just hit a number that's going to allow you to make your own decisions. Choose wisely. And you're only going to choose what your parents chose because you don't know any different. And
Yeah,
that's
that's
just
that
how it
that
goes.
is that right there just says it all, because um, people expect us to behave in certain ways based on their experience. Now, based on their experience, the way they were brought up, to respond a certain way, and we have our own ways of doing things and what we learned, and so there is a clash of the titans going on, right? So yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Um, the Actually, a thought came up in there. Well, before I go to that one, what happens to us when we actually see? the ugly side of people fighting, and just the nasty, and the violence that happens in us. What
Mhm.
does that do to us physically and emotionally, mentally? What happens to us?
Okay, so there's a couple of different things that does happen, and it depends on when you're observing this. Now, if you're seeing this in childhood, then what most children do, and we hear this often, is they create a sense of guilt. Oh, this is all my fault. I'm the one that has to go fix it. I'm the reason my parents are fighting or whatever. And we become withdrawn. Our nerves become a little bit more hyperactive, and so it initiates that fight or flight response. That's also known as anxiety, folks. So anxiety does have its place because it's our primal instinct for survival. And so we can become more anxious. We can have those nerves just going left and right, firing back and forth. It puts us into a thought process where, especially in children, the brain starts firing off faster. And so incomplete thoughts, rapid speech, all of the things that also are deemed very ADHD, in most settings. But now, if we're looking at this from the adult perspective and we go and we are seeing fighting in the distance, but we also saw fighting as a child, all of a sudden that looks familiar. And that's the norm. And that's what's comfortable, even though you may say it's uncomfortable. It's what you know how to navigate. And in order to thwart our own instinct, yeah, of the fight or flight, we're going to go to what we know. And this is where a lot of people don't understand, why do I keep picking the same kind of relationships? Why do I keep picking these things that just remind me of, you know, chaos and turmoil and trauma and hurt? And then in those moments, like in some of my therapy sessions, I said, well, how would you know to look for anything different? It's the one place that feels familiar. And what is that word familiar? Family. It's your family. You know how to navigate that. What would be wildly uncomfortable is the people that are like super healthy and they talk nice to each other over there, and or this group over here that's really cordial and civil and uses manners. You're going to go, I don't know, that's all weird, or I don't know, that's all boring, because the brain's not sparking these dopamine hits or this adrenaline rush of, I need to be engaged in it because I know how to do this. It's going to withdraw and go, I don't recognize that. I'm going to just stay away from that, and I'm going to go over here to my chaos that I do know oh so well.
That's amazing. And so I'm also hearing something in there, like I want to call it the love language of the family, you know? And so we attract people who understand the same love language, which is, there's a saying, two sickies don't make a welly, so we keep attracting people who are as, emotionally challenged as we are. And then
Yes.
we expect to be happy in, so there's all kinds of stuff. And that actually takes me to something that I was asked to do early on, when I was writing the steps, powerless over alcohol, and how it made my life unmanageable. I could see, like, okay, I said I was going to go home at 2 a.m. This was in New York at 2 a.m., but no, the party was going on. So it's 4 a.m. in the morning. And I'm like, go home with a hangover. Couldn't really show up for work the next day. So, it goes on. So that part was easy to see. But I was also asked to write how I'm powerless over people and
Hmm.
how that makes my life unmanageable, and which actually came as a surprise to me. And that it was nothing that was ever discussed around me, in my environment, nothing like that. So for the first time, and it was like, oh, it was life altering for me, um, because the thing that I got is, regardless of what the situation is, or regardless of what we're asked to do, regardless of what we're asking somebody else to do, regardless of how much they love us or don't love us, we're always making decisions, what's best for ourselves. I always want to do the best for me. Each one of us, are wired to just, we have to survive, right? So each one of us are wired to make decisions to the best of our ability. Now, whether, if I'm asking your help with something, and I don't take your advice, let's say, or I don't want to do what you're suggesting. But so there's a part of me that goes into, I don't know, a bit of a disagreement with the other part. It says, well, if I don't do what she says, she's not going to like me. If I don't do what she says, she's not going to be my friend. And then, okay, but so I can then choose to do what you're asking me to do because I want you in my life. Or if I choose not to do what you're asking me to do, then am I at a healthy place where I'm choosing what's best for me? And am I being a doormat? Am I being a control freak? Am I being all these different things that are going on in our minds? And that's a very confusing place to be in. So, I know for me, most of the challenges, they came from me, being upset because somebody did something I did not want them to do, or they didn't do something I wanted them to do. So, one way or another, that would upset me, and I would use it as an excuse to go and basically harm myself, right? No, let's go have another bottle or something, But a lot of times it was used as an excuse because I could not control other people, because I didn't understand that I can't control other people, that I am powerless over the decisions they make for themselves, and which in turn was, oh, wait a minute, if that's true, then they're powerless over the decisions that I make for myself. And so all of a sudden, I was empowering and disempowering at the same time. Okay, so I want to dive into this because I'm really interested in psychology. It took me a while to figure out.
That one is, again, that goes right with the self esteem work that I do 15 to 20 hours a week with adults, because it is in that statement that we are powerless over what anyone outside of us does, says, how they behave, how they react, how they interpret, how they perceive something. Even though it is their truth, we have to respect that is their truth because we have our truths. And so when you said it earlier, we operate from our own experience. We operate in our own survival method. We use our instincts, and that's how we get through day to day. And so when you realize that how somebody responded to you is not a reflection of you, all of a sudden there's this big, nice weight that rolls off. Again, all of the tension from our fight or flight response that keeps our bodies geared up to stay ready to go because we're going to just jet off this way. And all of that just starts to go, oh, wait, I don't have to run from their experience because it's not my experience. That's theirs. I can calm my muscles. I can regulate my breathing. I can bring down my heart rate. So, this is how that flow of from mind to body to action to reaction all works together. This is a big domino effect. And once you come into that place where you understand that, then the body even starts to heal because chronic tension, chronic anxiety, chronic stress is toxic inside the body. And so, how wonderful is it to have a little bit of peace in the body, a little relaxation, a little bit more muscle suppleness? I mean, babies are the first one to let us know if we're tense because we try and hold one and they're like, no, your body's hard, get away from me, get away from me. um so it's, yeah, there's so many things that go down into from one person's reaction to our reaction to understanding to accepting.
So, what do we do with people like, if you love me, you will do this? How do we overcome the fact that it's not whether they love us or not? It's their choice. How do we not make it personal that well, you don't love me if you don't do this for me?
Huh. Oh, that one's always a fun one. So, raw and unfiltered, right?
Yes.
Say, to turn around and say, if my love was ever contingent to you, you'd run away from me. So, if your love is contingent on me doing this, why am I here?
Mm.
Why do we have contingency plans on love? And I know it sounds harsh, but tough love is the way that gets anybody through any type of addiction. It's you need to address what you deem as love and then come back to me when you figure that one out because I don't operate on a seesaw. I don't have to. That's not my issue. I didn't wager a war against loyalty and commitment, and I'm not going to. I'm here. When somebody's here for you, and this is really to tell them when somebody's here for you, they're here with you. Good decisions, bad decisions, because it's not their decisions. It's that's what a good support system is.
Yeah. So there's a lot of work to be done. I mean, and this is just the first step, folks. Okay, this is just
Yeah,
the first
I
step. You know? I mean, but it's a foundational step. Everything is relying on this, understanding that we're giving something else control of ourselves to start with, and then it takes control. First, we give control, and it takes control. And how do we get out of that? And interestingly enough, how we take control back is by saying, "I am powerless. I give. I give." So that's where we start taking the power back when we stop fighting a monster that's bigger than us, if you will, right? Yeah.
right.
So yeah.
Their monster is
Okay.
not your monster.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to step two. That's all about having faith, believing that a power greater than myself can restore me to sanity. Now, for me, it was not a big stretch because, on a daily basis, I would say I'm going to do this and I wouldn't do that. And we know the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So it was not I was not arguing. I'm like, why do I do this? Why? And no answers. That's pretty crazy. I'm crazy. There's something wrong with me. So when it said power greater than myself could restore me to sanity, I was like, okay, yeah, yeah. Where is that power? Give me that power, please. But now this step, I do want to say that um, the 12 steps, they are, except for the very first one, are based on whether we call it God, whether we call it higher power, whether we call it source, whatever you want to call it. It does have you looking at a power outside of you to get some kind of help. So the idea is for you to just open, tiny bit of crack. They say you have, size of a mustard seed, which is tiny, right? And so for me, it was not a big deal as far as believing in God. I was raised in a home where, my father said, if God is everywhere, He's in my home, I don't have to go to church. So I didn't have a good or a bad relationship with God. I just, oh, thank God. Okay, God. So it was very neutral relationship. However, there are a lot of people who have been quote unquote disappointed, with the way God was showing up in their lives. God wasn't present at all, or God was, this punishing God and all that. And so, for a lot of people, it's really hard to kind of, you know, who is this power greater than myself? Or where do I find him? How do I find him? And so, where do we start with that? Where do we look at, where do we find? How do we even begin the journey? Let's do this.
And I'm glad that you framed it that way because that has been probably one of the most marked reasons that people don't attend 12-step programs because they believe it's just simply a faith-based program. And what if I don't believe in God? The thing that becomes bigger than yourself is the willingness, your willingness to say, I'm open to the opportunity to change the life that I don't like. I need to change this thing that has taken over me. I've lost control. And it's that small little fissure, and however the person wants to see it, whether it's God, whether it's in their spirituality, whether it's in, animism with Native Americans or other island cultures, it's finding that willingness to step through that fissure and say, I'm ready. And that's
Yeah.
such an important first factor because you cannot get anywhere. And for those of us that have ever helped someone who's addicted to anything in particular, if they're not willing to change, there's no point in trying to help because then all we're doing is enabling over and over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember having conversations with people who were either disappointed in God or whatever. And I remember, we used to say, just think of it as good, orderly direction. Just start with that. God, good orderly direction. There are a bunch of people who are going to give you direction, good direction, things that you can do, things that you don't know how to do. So let that be your first God, if you will,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
And people were willing to do that because the thing that's like you were saying, 12-step programs, it's not this God or that God. It's inclusive of all different religions, all different beliefs.
mhm,
There are
mhm.
atheists. You name it, it's inclusive. And so if you starting with just I'm willing to follow some good orderly direction, it's a very, very good start. So just have a little bit of faith and be willing to open that door just a little bit of crack, right? Is there anything we need to add to the second step?
Having faith in yourself that you're going to be able to do it.
Mm,
This rebuilds that, again, that self esteem, that tattered self esteem, the crushed confidence. Because if you're going to have faith in something, also have faith in yourself. Otherwise, you'll leave yourself behind. And that's just as important in recovery, not just sobriety, but in true recovery, because you will look back one day and say, you know what, I had faith in myself that I can do it because I also gave faith into other things that I can make it. And they are watching out, whatever it is, whoever they are.
beautiful. Love that. I definitely want to add that one to it. Okay. So going to step three, it's basically willing to turn ourselves and our will to the care of God as we understood him. Again, it goes back to how do we see God, who is God to us. And the beauty of that is that you can start a relationship anywhere and just, uh, my understanding of God has evolved immensely, you know, in the last 33 years. It just, where I started was just like, oh, God is everywhere, He's in my home, to now it's a very personal God. And so, um, how do we learn to trust God enough to be willing to turn ourselves into the care of somebody? That's like going a free fall off a cliff, right? What do I do? So yeah.
And this is so important to differentiation, understanding that turning yourself over is also the equivalent of accepting help. So no matter which way you see it, if as long as you're willing to accept what is coming towards you, what is coming for you, what is extending out its hand so that you can relieve yourself of the pain, relieve yourself of the addictive, repetitive behavior, relieve yourself of the horrible, addictive, negative thoughts, because that's just as much of an addiction as that negativity, that chronic negativity, and accept that someone really is willing to help me, to hear me. Some people see that, oh, well, that's the therapist. Well, who's listening else? Who else is listening above? Okay, that's your God. Who's listening while you stand on the grass because you're grounded? That's the earth. However you see this, it's being willing to accept the help.
that,
And
that's beautiful. Yeah.
That creates the cognitive space for us of there are these things, there are these people, there are these modalities that are available to me so that I don't have to be stuck. So now this is you coming through that fissure. You buttered up your body, you squeeze sideways, and you like shut yourself out and ready to go. Okay, here I am now. What that you like you said, the free fall, you all of a sudden feel very exposed and it's scary and you want to climb right back in that old way, but the old way has its old ways. You'll always stay that way if you decide to go back. Scary doesn't have to be bad. Scary brings strength. Scary can bring resilience. Scary can bring about that trust in yourself that maybe you never had before. Finding your identity, finding your confidence, finding that appreciation, the humility. This notion of self preservation is now a priority. What an amazing concept to have when you're coming out from addiction to sobriety to recovery. So, this is also a cyclical one you'll continue to come back to over and over and over again. It's such an important piece, especially in the
Yeah.
steps.
Yeah. We used to call it the AA waltz, the 1 2 3 1 2 3. But now let me I love that you brought up whether you're sitting on grass. Now, regardless of who we are, there's something about us when we're in nature's, like s- standing by the ocean, sitting on the sand. We can feel the energy. They're just, it's just there. We just feel good. Or walking through the woods or sitting in a park. There's something about nature just feels good, And for me, I had, I would, we all had this little voice in our head. I had a lot of opportunities to listen to the little voice in my head or not, and not there were, the screaming voice to do something, was not the one. That one usually got me in trouble. Oh, let's go have another one. Oh, they're having fun, let's go join them. Oh, don't worry, you can get home on time to do blank. The screaming voice was always the one that got me in trouble. But there was this quieter, more soothing voice that would say, no, you really need to be not doing that. And every time I listened to that voice, things actually went better than I turned out, than I expected. When I didn't listen to it, things always went wrong. So for me, I recognize that as my God voice, right? So so little by little, as I paid attention at my track record, it was obvious to me that God had better decision making powers than I did. you know, so it started kind of, God had to earn my trust. That little voice had to earn my trust, and so. For me to practice the Thursday, because it was like, turn your will over. What do you mean? How do you turn it over? Like, my brain just couldn't comprehend. And so I'm a very visual person. So I started like picturing, whatever it was. If it was a situation, I would say, okay, God, here's what I want. I'm going to put it in your hand. I would actually do a visual. We see those pictures of this great big hand. It says, "I have you in the palm of my hand." Those we've seen those posters. So I would picture this great big hand from me, the hand of God. I would like picture putting whatever is in his hand, saying, "Okay, God, here's what I want." I would tell him what I wanted. And if you give it back to me, cool, woohoo, we'll celebrate. If you don't, I know you have something better for me. You know, and when if it was a person that I was having a conflict with, I would literally see myself picking them up by the neck. You see in the cartoons, that, back of the shirt, the feet dangling. I would put them in God's hands. Okay, God, you take care of them. Guide my thoughts and actions. Guide their thoughts and actions. So, and I would just, little by little, I found out, for me, it worked beautifully, because then I stopped having arguments in my head with that person, because now God was taking care of them. God was making everything right. He was managing my thoughts and actions. So I didn't have to, just be in that insane having the argument with them, because somehow I would always have to win the argument that was never ending, right? So, but that was that was my way, that was my way of managing myself. The first three steps. I'm powerless over this. I put it in God's hands. I believe He can take care of it, and I'm willing to let Him take care of it. Damn, I have the power to shut out the most powerful force in the universe. Oh my God! So, so that's how I started learning to manage. And you know so what I'm curious, why did that work for me? What is it about me, uh, allowing God to earn my trust, allowing God to take care of the situation that I can't take care of? I mean, it just seemed like it was so important for God to earn my trust. Why is that?
There's a couple of ways to take that response pattern. We can go again right back. You hear so much nowadays, especially about your inner child this. Go back to childhood. When we looked at our parents, our authority, and it approved, and then we had a good result, we did that thing again. When we did something and they didn't approve and it went really badly, we felt really badly. So, this is the cognitive pattern that we all have. This is our capacity as human beings to use this judgment in bits and pieces. And that's the kind of more that scientific base of operant learning. We're going to learn that trusting this authority, getting the good result, means do it again. Awesome. Going to our authority with the stuff that we already messed up on, having that not approved side or consequence side, we know this is a bigger deal as adults, and then feeling really bad. Well, which one are we going to choose? Out of this X, we're going to go with the one that the authority says feels good and gave you the good results.
Yeah.
Repetitive behavior over and over and over again. And then it reiterates that strength in our decision making. Because then it's like, oh, I can make a good decision because I'm letting go of control of I'm going to navigate all of this all just by myself and not think higher or not hand it over to something higher. Well, what happens when we're navigating and we're driving, for instance, and you're holding onto that steering wheel as tight as you can, white knuckling, like we white knuckle life, going to get through it. You feel every bump on the road. What happens when you loosen your grip or just steer with your palms? The car maneuvers easier. We don't feel those bumps. We have better range of motion if we need to turn. I almost felt extra Asian with the little wax on, wax off here for a minute. We needed to laugh. Um, but that's one of
That was
those things.
so unexpected, but that's so
Oh,
true, though. It is
I'm
wax
good.
on,
I'm
wax
good for one-liners all day long. We've got all day for this. But that's again, that's even not having the constraint on myself to set out just an approved statement for you. Sometimes life takes us this little direction and we go with it. We get our result. Did we like our result? Cool. We do it again. If we don't, we don't. Our
Yeah.
horrible results of addiction, hangover, body aches, lost relationships, lost funds, and it goes and goes and goes. So no, just sit back, let go a little bit. The whole let go, let God, it's a thing.
Yeah. It is a thing. It's a beautiful thing, and beautifully said. Oh my God, Sherry, thank you so much. I'm so loving this, and love your input. I love the way you're making sense out of what would go on in my head. It's an interesting place to visit.
Hey, love the theme parks all the time.
Yes, we do. Okay. Um, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up this segment. Guys, this is a four-part series that we're going to be doing. Coming up next, we're going to be doing step 4 and 5, and then step 6 and 7. Okay, and 8, 9, 10. We're going to be this. This is it's life altering. It really is life altering, and we're looking to make this simple. At least give you enough information for you to contemplate and see which aspect of it you can actually implement. Maybe it makes sense um, in what's going on in your life in one way or another. And this has worked not only for people that I have personally worked with, and I know Sherry has worked with over the years. Um, in people who are in recovery, whatever program it may be. But I have personally mentored people, um, just people I work with, friends and things like that. They come to me for advice on a particular thing because some of them think I'm wise. And you know what, I have gained quite a bit of wisdom by learning how to live in a more simple way, in a way that makes sense. And so we're hoping by sharing this information with you that there are different aspects of what we're sharing with you. There are different points, different perspectives that resonate with you, that maybe give you an aha moment, maybe give you a little bit of freedom or release from whatever situation you're facing, or maybe you have a loved one who's struggling with maybe some kind of an addiction or just emotional. So whatever it is, we're hoping this is making an impact in your life. So do share about it, and do respond. Let us know what you think and what would you like us to do next. And so with this, we're going to go ahead and close down, say goodbye for this particular segment, and we'll be back with steps 4 and 5. Sherry, I am so loving this, and I'm so appreciative of you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Okay, bye everybody. We'll see you on the next one.